I think in the beginning, my martial training helped me be ready for the teacher, like being the classroom teacher, not because it was necessarily the teacher teaching part of it, because I've been tutoring since I was in high school and that kind of a thing. But the patience and the calm and the dealing with somebody that's a bit riled up, or you feel yourself becoming a bit riled up, is like, nope, not the right time, not the right place, dial it back. Just that self-awareness in the beginning was really important.
Welcome. You're listening to the next episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, and I am your host for the day, Andrew Adams. Jeremy is off today, and so here I am filling in his shoes. Luckily, we wear the same size. We have the same size feet, so that works out pretty well. And today we're joined by Mr. Chris Rickard. Chris, nice to see you today.
Nice to see you, Andrew.
And for all you listeners that may be new, I want to encourage you to check out whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, where you'll find all the information on this episode and every episode that we've had in perpetuity. They will always go there, and each episode will have its own page, show notes, information on the guest and how the episode went, maybe some other photos. And if you want to check out everything that Whistlekick does, you can check out whistlekick.com. to find out all of the things that we do, whether it's events or books that we have for sale or merchandise. And if you do go there, please check out, when you check out, use the code podcast15. You can save yourself 15% on anything pretty much anything in our store. I think events are the only thing you can't. And it really helps us to connect, educate, and entertain all of the martial artists of the world, which, of course, is our mission statement here at Whistlekick. So, Chris, it's great to see you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Long time coming.
Yes, absolutely. You have been a long-time listener of the show. I know you've been involved behind the scenes for a long time. Why don't we start there? Like, how did you get involved with Whistlekick, and then we'll talk about your martial journey.
If this is going to come as a shocker to anyone, Andrew, I know it'll be you. I'm a nerd. I'm a geek, however you want to say it. My day job is I teach high school chemistry in a public school in New Jersey. And at one point, my now wife and I, when we were dating, were living in completely different states. And that can be a little bit tricky. And one thing that I found to help spend my time was podcasts. I would listen to podcasts. And I built that habit in like the mid 2000s. So like 2025, 2020. No, that's next year. This is going to be awesome. So like 2005, 2006, I started listening to podcasts. And my daughter was born in 2012. And when she was in preschool, there was a local martial arts school that came and did a seminar like once or twice a year with them to expose the kids, drum up business, the whole deal. And it was really good. And she had seen some stuff on TV, watching PBS. There was like this karate tiger guy that I don't remember the name of at this point. And she would show some interest, and she would start to sort of mimic some of it. And I had done martial arts previously, so it was like definitely like you're watching, you're like, okay, does she really want to do this, or is she just getting my hopes up kind of thing? And as a result, again, she's around 5 or so. She's like, I think I want to do this. And my wife was fully supportive, looked at the school that had come in and done the demos for her daycare, preschool, and it wasn't a good match for my daughter. It was a little bit too loud, a little bit too energetic. And after that school, we stopped at another school because, again, for as much as there's a joke, there's a martial arts school on every block. This was more like a half mile to a mile away. And we went in, and it was exactly the kind of school that would work well for my daughter and would work well for me, to be truthful. And so signing up and getting through all that, and then just like anything else, when I dive into something, I will start doing the deep dive. And so now, okay, we're back in martial arts. Okay, let's start looking up the martial arts podcasts. And Whistlekick came up as one of the top hits. Started listening, and this was back when it was really just Jeremy doing interview after interview after interview. And yeah, that was how I first got in. And later on, Jeremy had asked, I believe the question was something along the lines of, if Whistlekick had an infinite budget, what could Whistlekick do? Like, what things should be on his idea? And I kicked in and shot him an email. I was like, hey, this isn't really an infinite budget idea. It kind of is, but it's that idea of record the video in person. And then after the episode is over, take another 5 minutes, 10 minutes with the person being interviewed and have them show you something. Like if there was something that they wanted to be known for. Because again, Whistlekick is definitely style agnostic. It's never telling anyone the right way to do something. It's always about exploring ideas. And this would be a way of exploring an idea. Or at times, like even maybe trying to preserve something that is unique to that person that was being interviewed, that once they're gone, it might be gone with them. And it was that idea. And that conversation led to just some other conversations. And there was a hiccup or two along the way, is like trying to do something similar, but it never really caught traction. And I started doing other things as far as Whistlekick was concerned.
Yep. So in the early days, there weren't video at all. We've obviously transitioned to now all of the episodes are released in video, so at least we've gotten it there. There have been some in-person interviews, so we're getting closer, I guess. But you said something interesting that I want to go back to. You mentioned that when you were going around looking at schools with your daughter, you had already had prior training, which I want to go back to that. But because you had training, were you specifically looking for things, specific school type for your daughter?
I will say I wasn't looking for a particular style, like Taekwondo versus Tang Sudo versus any one of the specific flavors of karate or anything like that. But I've been in enough martial arts schools and trained at least for a short period in enough places that I know what the right martial arts school for me feels like almost the moment that you walk in the door. And I'm pretty sure you have a similar experience. Like you can walk in, you can watch class for 5 or 10 minutes and you already know whether it's a good fit for you or not. And it's not a judgment as to whether the school's a good school or a bad school. It's like ice cream flavors. Some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla, some people want the peanut butter cup magic 13 ingredients kind of thing. And you just know which one is the right fit for you. And that's really what it came down to, is that first school wasn't a good fit for her. I could see it was a good fit for a number of people because the class size was solid. They had instructors that were motivated. They were doing the right things for their group. It's just my daughter wasn't someone inclined for that group.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's rewind all the way back. How did you initially get involved in martial arts in general?
Okay, martial arts in general started for me in the mid-90s. And so, 1994 timeframe. My dad was a big Chuck Norris movie fan. And I remember him, like, we'd go to the video store, and this was before Blockbuster even, and there'd be whatever movie in the kids section that my sister and I could get. My sister's 2 years younger than I am. And a lot of times he would get a Chuck Norris movie. And it didn't matter which one. It was just that was going to be the way that he was going to unwind after he had to sit through a kids movie. And when we got to high school, my dad decided that he wanted my sister to be able to handle herself if something unfortunate should happen. And this isn't a situation where we were in a bad neighborhood or anything like that. Like, I grew up in a nice rural, technically it was a city, but I think that's more of a technicality that the population hit the right number at one point kind of thing. And there was a small school opening up nearby that my dad knew the person that was running it, at least tangentially, and price was right. Like, that was another factor. And he wanted me to start at the same time so that my sister wouldn't be the only one, and she wouldn't feel that it was just her. And I was like, yes, please. This is awesome. I would love this. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, the whole thing. Like, let's go. And it was an old school style school. It was Hapkido, which for me, it's like, I don't know what that means. That's great. And it turns out that the instructors that were running the school also had a background in Tang Soo Do at the time. We did a lot of grappling. We did a lot of conditioning. We did a lot of jumping, a lot of kicking. And one thing that we didn't do was forms. That was not on their curriculum. That wasn't on their plan. They had their plan up on the wall. There were all of the different ranks up to black belt, and there was the list of everything that you needed to know. And I remember going from white belt to yellow stripe. There were 17 kicks as a part of it. Like, that's the part that sticks for me. And it's all the classic kicks that you would think of: the front kick, the side kick, the back side kick, things like that. And it was rough. It was a kids class, or I should say it was a teens class. They broke it up. Really younger kids, teens, and then there were adult classes as well. And one of the interesting things I came to find out a little bit later is they actually had a special needs class as well, which in the mid-90s I don't think was really the norm, but it played into a background of a handful of the instructors, and so they made a point of making it a point. And so I'm in the teens class. I've got a couple of friends that are in it. My sister's in it. A couple of her friends are in it and all. And it was great. Had a blast. I think over 2 or 3 years, I think I made it to my yellow belt. Like, it was definitely that old school of the, no, you're going to be at this belt until I tell you that you are ready to move on. Mm-hmm. And before I graduated high school, I was in the marching band. I was on the volleyball team, a couple of things. And if you know me being on the volleyball team should be funny because I'm a whopping 5'8", but missed a couple of classes because of when the classes were. And I got to go to the adult class a couple of times to make it up. And that was when I realized it was a different world. It was the same things, but the intensity, the application and everything, it was 2 levels above where they were teaching the teens. It was kind of like, I kind of wish I could have been okay for this, but I wasn't old enough, and that was that. Unfortunately, going away to college, I had to take a step back because I couldn't commute back and forth, didn't have the car, and I didn't have a Hapkido school at college. So that was sort of where that intro sort of died off a little bit.
Gotcha. Now, you started training as a teenager with your sister. How did that affect the dynamic of your training, being there with your sister?
I don't know it was actually an issue for us at all. I took to it. I enjoyed it. She had a ballet background, so there were definitely some things that she took to a little bit better. She never really got addicted to it, I guess, in the same way that I did. Like, I was really enjoying it. She also was running cross country and stuff at the time, so it was more for her just a thing that she did. But for me, it was a thing that I wanted to do, I think is a good way of putting it.
Got it. Now, that brings us up into your, late teens, early 20s, up through college. Where did you go after that?
So college, I thought I was way better at martial arts than I was. And this is one of those things that I can now say as a 40-something-year-old guy that I wouldn't have been comfortable admitting when I was in my 20s. I originally started off joining the Ishinryu Karate Club at Penn State. Go Lions. And I thought I was hot stuff because I was, with the sparring sort of things, tossing their brown belts around and things like that, to the point where, like, okay, who are you? Why do you have a white belt? Like, how long have you been training? And everything like that. And so again, like, high school guy ego was out beyond where it should have been. And then it came time for the first belt testing. And it was all based on, could you do the kata? Like, we're going to watch you do the kata, and that's your test. And we're not even watching you as individuals. It was as part of the group. And it was Seisan. I thought I knew it, and apparently I didn't, or at least not well enough. And after the test is over, like, I went to one of the instructors, not the head instructor, but one of the others. It was like, what did I do wrong? Like, I thought I had this, like, tell me what I need to do. And he's like flipping through, looking at notes, and he's like, it was your back foot. Like, I'm sorry, what? Your back foot. You weren't 10 toes forward. Our standard is 10 toes straight forward during this kata. I was like, okay. I have an issue, though. And he's like, okay, what's that? I was like, I broke my leg right at the end of third grade. And when they reset my leg, my toes don't point straight forward anymore. I'm like, so I'm off at a little bit of an angle. And he's like, oh, okay. That doesn't change anything for today, but we'll keep that in mind going forward. But try to, again, you can compensate a little bit. It's not ideal, but try to get those 10 toes forward. Okay, I can do that. So end of the semester comes around. It's time for the next test. And I put a lot of effort into making sure that my 10 toes were forward. Like, that was the thing for me. And end of the test happens, and like, okay, great. And then I don't get called for having passed the test again. I'm like, okay. So afterward, I go to one of the other instructors. I'm like, what happened? Like, let me know what I did wrong. And he's like, oh, well, what we noticed is when you were in your stance, your knee was cocked in. Like, your knees weren't pointing forward the way they should have been on your back leg. I'm like, okay. I'm like, let me tell you something that may not have been communicated. And I, like, mentioned the whole thing about the broken leg. Like, so I can either have 10 toes forward, or my knee can be forward. I can't do both physically. And he's like, oh, okay. We'll keep that in mind going forward. I'm like, you know what? Like, it was one where it was like, that was enough for me at that point. It was just deciding it wasn't a good match. And another part that factored in is being a chemistry major. I didn't have time in my schedule based on where some of my chem labs were to keep going in the spring with the same. It was going to conflict with the club nights, so I wasn't going to be able to attend. And so that was just where I sort of fell away from there. And I will say now, like, I have that better appreciation for it. I really wish I had been able to stick around and learn more, but it was me, it wasn't them. And I'll admit it. Tried some other things here and there while I was in college, and while I was grad school, tried Taekwondo for a little bit, but again, schedule just wasn't working out for that. I ended up moving eventually to Maryland, and I got a job down in the Annapolis area. And one day, because I was in charge of doing computer stuff, the computer consultant would come in and would do our backups and everything for us. We got to talking, and he's like, oh, you used to do martial arts? I was like, yeah, and had a similar conversation to what we just did. And he's like, okay. He's like, I've got somebody I want you to check out. He's like, I think it's the right place for you. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I'm not doing anything that way right now. I'd love to get back into it. I'm at a stable enough point. I've got free time because I'm a single guy and my girlfriend is in another state. Sure, why not? And so he points me to Master Al Gauthier. And that was one, Andrew, that I would say is that moment when you walk into a new school or you walk into school, it's like, this is home. Like, I walked in, I almost didn't need to like watch the lesson before I was like, yep, here, take my money, sign me up. Like, this is it. It was a 2-car garage worth of space that he had turned into a dojo at his house. Wood fireplace in the middle along the wall in order to heat it up, the weapon racks, the whole deal. And he was a Korean compilation style called Hanguk Musul, which basically just means Korean national martial art to a certain extent. And I was there with him for 3 years and learned so much. It was great. I managed to earn my black belt before I was moving away, because in the time that this is all going on, I start dating my now wife. We got engaged, and her rule was we had to be living in the same state in order to get married, which I think is a fair rule.
Reasonable.
And she really liked her boss at the time. I wasn't a huge fan of my boss at the time. And cost of living in both of our areas was pretty high. But around where her mom lives in South Jersey, cost of living was a lot lower. So it was one of those like, okay, I think we can make this work if we end up around where her mom is. And that's what we did. So that was me transitioning out of the style that for the longest of times I really like. I would have referred to that as my style, the Hanguk Musul. Like, if you ask me, that's what I did. Mm-hmm. It's Korean. It's a compilation of Hapkido and Tang Sudo, as well as Qigong and a variety of other things. Like, defensive tactics. It was fun. It was a lot. It was perfect for me at that point in my life. And then I moved to South Jersey. And again, being from Pennsylvania, I will make jokes about South Jersey, but we'll hold off on those for now. And there was a local Tang Sudo school that I ended up joining in. There was a lot of overlap with the forms. It was a school that had a person or two along the way that had also joined on the Olympic team for Taekwondo, because enough overlap that it worked. And so it was a very different focus than what I was used to, but I had enough appreciation to see all the positives on it. The downside was when I started teaching at the high school that I'm still teaching at now, I couldn't make it work with my teaching schedule. It was just, I didn't have enough time, because a first-year teacher, you're in over your head, and everyone knows that you're in over your head. And so I had to step back from that, and never got back in there. And then eventually, fast forward another, we'll say roughly 6 years or so, my daughter's born, and then we get back into the story that we started off the episode with. So yeah, that gets us caught up to today for the most part.
Okay, so here's something that I found interesting about your journey. Is you started training at what age, roughly?
Say 14.
14. And you went off to college at, I'm assuming, 18. So you had trained for 4 years, which is not a ton of time, especially in a 14-year-old's life. I mean, it percentage-wise, it is. But, when you're at that age, you're being pulled in so many different directions. And you go off to college, and you, of your own admission, feel like you're a much better martial artist than you were. And then you're given this challenge, kind of like, get your toes pointing forward because you failed an exam. And then fast forward to the next exam, you're failed for a different reason, but it's a related. That would be really easy for a student to say, you know what, that's it, I'm done. forget it. I'm out of here. Like, I'm never doing this again. But you didn't. You stuck with it, not necessarily with that group, but, can you talk a little bit about what was going through your head at that point?
I think if we want to go into the why I didn't just call it quits at that point, I had such a positive experience with my first school where, again, it was grappling, it was sparring, it was joint locks, things like that. And then the club was very opposite in my mind, where I would have said my Hapkido school was a very soft style. The club was a very hard, rigid version of things. My Hapkido school didn't focus on kata. The club had a really strong emphasis on kata. Like, I remember the beginning of class after a warm-up was everybody that was there that night would start off and we'd all do the first kata together. And then anyone that knew the second kata stayed on the floor and everyone else bowed off and you did calisthenics or other things while everyone else is going through their kata. So it was really kata focused. And that gave it a separation for me where it wasn't martial arts as a whole. It was this style of martial arts. And so for the longest time when I was sort of looking, I kept trying to look for a soft style school rather than the hard style school. And when I tried the Taekwondo school when I was in grad school, that was an attempt to be like, you know what, I'm going to give this another try. Maybe it's going to work. And I wasn't really there long enough to see if it was a good fit for me or not. But being back was like that. I enjoy this. I still enjoy this. I still remember some stuff. I like this. And then again, as we fast forward to when I was outside of Annapolis in Maryland, that school had a bunch of kata. And I had matured enough that I could look at it and be like, okay, this isn't the only thing we do, but it's an important thing. And I was appreciating it a bit more for what it was, more than what I did, or more than what I would have when I was in college.
Got it. Okay. And that makes sense. Knowing your personality, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, the other thing that I found interesting was you, and I don't know of another school that does this. I'm sure that there are, but you mentioned the first school that you went to, they had their entire curriculum on the wall, right? To get your first rank, you need to do all of these things. And not only was it, public that you could go and find. I've seen schools that like have a book that you could look at, but like it's on the wall. How much do you think that played a part in your enjoying that school because you could see what you needed to do?
It definitely set up okay, so wait, what do I still need to know for this next rank? And you have that, I'll say like Christmas morning kind of thing of when am I going to get to unwrap it? Like, when are you going to show me that thing? I know that it's up there and it has a name, but it doesn't tell me how to do it on the wall. It's just the name. And they weren't the like hand grasping swallow's tail or something like that. It was like, it is the front kick. It is the side kick. It is the self-defense combination number 1. Like, it was all very plain English and everything. And so that was interesting because it gave you that idea of what the instructors were looking for. It didn't tell you when you were going to get it. And once you had everything checked off on the list, it also didn't mean that you were testing right away. It was no, when you're ready, we'll let you know that you're ready, and don't ask us, because if you have to ask us, you're obviously not ready. But it also gave you that perspective of being able to look down, okay, sheet 10, sheet 9, sheet 8, all the way up. It was like wow, there's a lot of stuff that you need to know in order to get to those higher ranks and eventually a black belt rank. Like, and you're sort of like doing the math as well. It's like this is a long-term commitment. And some people liked it, other people not as much. But it was really interesting, though, to see the whole progression. And you could also see that at times some of the techniques you learned at the lower ranks were coming back at the higher ranks as a combination, where it was like you'd have to do this, this, and this all in a quick sequence kind of thing. So you could see how the pieces started to fit together as well.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you are a science teacher. Do you feel that your martial training helped you as a teacher, and vice versa? Do you feel like being a teacher, whether it's a science teacher or not, has transgressed into your martial training at all?
I think in the beginning, my martial training helped me be ready for the teacher, like being the classroom teacher. Not because it was necessarily the teacher teaching part of it, because I've been tutoring since I was in high school and that kind of a thing. But the patience and the calm and the dealing with somebody that's a bit riled up, or you feel yourself becoming a bit riled up, is like, nope, not the right time, not the right place, dial it back. Just that self-awareness in the beginning was really important. One of the things that I will say that I appreciate is that I haven't had to use my martial techniques for the most part while teaching. I've only ever had to help break up 2 fights, and they weren't fights that I would be nervous about trying to be in the middle of to break up. It's people aren't pulling out weapons or anything like that. I'm in a good school district and all. It's become something at times that I've been able to relate to my students about, because some of them study martial arts or are interested, or again, who doesn't like a good action movie kind of thing. It's been longer now. 7 years ago, I had a student in my chemistry class that also studied at the same martial arts school that I do now, and he outranked me. which became really amusing for me. It was always a little bit awkward for him, because I can transition back and forth as far as that. In this setting, I outrank you. In that other setting, you outrank me, and that's fine. It doesn't faze me in the least, because different settings, different rules. You know more of that, I know more of this, and vice versa. Like it was easy. But it was always weird for him. It was like having to call me one thing in one place and call me another thing in another place, and that's been fun. Now that I've stepped into more of a assistant instructor role in my current school, all of my years of experience teaching high school sciences definitely plays a bigger role for me when I'm in the dojo as well. That some of the classroom management and some of the trying to figure out how to reword things, especially. Like, I've been able to fine tune that a lot more in my high school teaching, and then being able to take that skill set over into the martial arts of the, like, okay, you're not understanding it when I say it this way, when I show you this way. Let's think of it like this. I want you to try think of it this way instead, and then you see the light bulb go on, or then you hear the pad smack the way that you want to hear the focus mitt smack, and things like that. Like, it definitely plays back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, what's your training look like these days? Like, you've been at the same school for a number of years. You mentioned you started becoming an assistant instructor. What was that transition like?
In the beginning, it was definitely a bit of an ego boost. I'll admit it. Walking in, so we started, my daughter and I, at this school in November of 2017, and I've been with them since. She had her Little Dragons class, which was then followed by the basic level class, which was all ages. And so it would be her class, and then it would be my class. And it was a lot of fun. I'm sitting there in the parent gallery during the kids' class, because you're allowed to watch and everything. and I'm there with my notebook and I'm taking notes. Like I'm doing all the things that um, a geek does and a teacher does. It was like, okay, so wait, what order is Sensei doing the warm ups in? Is this a different order than the other day? Like, and all that. And Sensei Fran knew that I was a teacher because we had had that discussion early on. She knew that I had a background, and so then she's got me coming out on the mat with the little kids. Again, another adult in the room when you have a kids class is never a bad thing for the most part. And so I'm helping out that way. And before long, I was accepted into our association's what we call CIT program, so certified instructor training, because they do put effort into trying to help teach people how to teach. Because doing martial arts is one thing, teaching martial arts is another thing. There's overlap. Some people are better at overlap, and some people can't overlap. And so they got me involved with that, and especially when we were getting to four school events, because locally in our style there are four schools, sister schools, that we will get together a couple times every season essentially and do a tournament or a board breaking event or things like that. And so there'd be this yellow belt, orange belt up there that was at the end of the CIT line, and like you're definitely getting like weird looks of like, who's this guy and why is he there? And then people got to know me. They're like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, P.S. Like, I had a black belt in another style too. So if I don't look like a normal or like your typical yellow belt or orange belt, there's reasons why. Just get to talk and we'll explain it. It's no big deal. But again, like, I'm not trying to demand that I should have a black belt from day one either. Like, that's no, I've been out of this long enough. I'm rusty enough. Like, and I don't know your style at all. It's not what I trained in. Bring me up, and it's been great. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And especially once I got my first degree black belt, I'm up in front of the room more often. There's usually a night or two a week where I can be one of the people that's responsible for making sure the class happens and everything like that. And it's a lot of fun.
Now, is your daughter still training?
Unfortunately, no. When she was going to transition out of the Little Dragons class into the Basics class, Basics was more martial arts than she wanted. She enjoyed Sensei Fran. She enjoyed the game level that we had in the Dragons class. And she was also in dance classes at the time. And she decided, you know what? This isn't fun for me right now. I'm really enjoying the dance. Can I just do dance? And so this was right around when she was going into first grade. It was like, sure, not a problem. And she continues to dance to this day at this point. Like she's always done it, and she knows that she's always welcome to come back. She's done like a board breaking event once or twice just for fun. Mixed success, because as you get older, the boards get bigger, they get thicker, it gets a little bit more challenging, and if you haven't actively been practicing, it doesn't go as well as maybe you would have thought it might.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that your school, your current school, has three or four other sister schools, and you get together to do tournament thing, every year or so. Does your school go to other tournaments, or have you gone to other tournaments outside of those?
My school, so like my location, we'll call it the Mullica Hill location, it does have people that are more often starting to go out to other non-affiliated tournaments, more open tournaments. And part of that is because the gentleman that I think of as my lead instructor right now, Sensei Aiden, he went to the local college and was involved with their karate club, martial arts club, and they were doing tournaments. And so him having that exposure, he wanted it to be more available to anyone in our school that wanted to do it. And so we do start to branch out. I know a couple of the other affiliated schools with us have some individuals, but it's not like we generally put together a big team and go to an open or anything like that. It's available, but not as taken advantage of as maybe it could be.
What keeps you motivated currently to still train?
I'm a better person when I'm training, and my wife will completely support me in that statement. She knows when it's been too long since I've made it to the dojo to really work out and everything like that. Like, fortunately, during that whole 2020-21, we did the Zoom classes and things like that. So you got to still have that involvement, and it wasn't just a dead stop to a certain extent. But like, if it's been a week or two and I haven't been able to make it to class, she knows it and she reminds me, like, and I appreciate it every time she does. I forget where I was going with this one. Andrew, help me out.
So the question was, what keeps you training currently?
Oh, okay. So yeah, better me is definitely a part of it. Helping other people along their journey is another big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, when you can help a student, especially the younger kids, gain that self-confidence, get those light bulbs to click on, where you know that they're like, 10 minutes ago I couldn't do this and now I can do it. Like, that's a great feeling. And helping to be one of the people that keeps it available as an option is a big deal. Helping out the adult students as well that are toward the beginning of their journey, because again, they came in because their kids came in or something, and learning martial arts when you're in your 40s and 50s is different than when you are single digits or in your teens. Like, it's not a big stretch to say that it's a different thing. So being able to be the adult in the room that is, again, 30s, 40s, 50s, be like, yeah, no, this works a little bit differently for us. And here's, for where you're at, here's how we can help you make it work for you. And then you keep moving toward this, toward that. One of the other things that keeps it interesting for me, honestly, is all the Whistlekick stuff, the free training days, the Martial Summit, and the people that I've met and the people that I've shared with, trained with. That's fun. They're outside my style, and most of the people that I've worked with have all been very receptive to helping each other out, trading information. And again, that whole thing of, oh, this is the way that we do it. I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong. We just do it differently. And maybe we do it differently because it's a different style, or maybe it's because of body type or things like that. And maybe it's just because we're looking at things a little bit differently as well. And so being able to interact with some of those people and their energy, their enthusiasm definitely helps as well.
And where do you go from here? What's next for you in the future? If we were to get together in 5 years and do another interview, what would you hope to be saying?
I'm still doing it. That's my biggest hope, because that's one thing that I will say is I have had those periods in my life where I have stepped away. And it's not stepping away for a week or so. It's stepping away for a couple of years or a decade to a certain extent. And the amount that you lose, even in 6 months or a year, like, yeah, you can get most of it back most of the way. But the best way to keep improving is to just keep doing it day by day by day. Like, I don't want to have to say that I got injured or something and that put me out for a year or something like that. I want to be able to say I've been able to train. This is where I was. There's some things that I used to be able to do that I probably can't do, because again, 5 years from now is 5 years older. But here's the other things that I've learned in the meantime. This is the new depth of knowledge that I have. This is what I understand that I didn't understand before. This is what I've been exposed to that I wasn't before. If it involves a rank change, yay. If it doesn't, I still learned the whole time. That's what it is. The rank, to me, for a certain extent, is more so for other people to know where you're at. And I know where I'm at, and that's really what matters. So.
And if people listening want to get in touch with you, is there, the Instagram, any socials that you want to share with people?
what I'll say is if they want to be in touch, if you don't mind, I'll ask them to get in touch with you and have you forward them to me.
Sure.
I try to avoid the social medias as much as possible to a certain extent. Part of that comes with being a public school teacher as well. Like there's some things there. If you look for me on Facebook, you'll find me on Facebook, especially if you run in any of the Whistlekick martial arts circles.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what I'll say on that one.
And I'm going to throw it back to you here to close, but just to let the audience know, remind everybody that, whistlekick.com does a lot of stuff. Whistlekick does a lot of stuff. You can go to whistlekick.com to find all that information. And, Chris, what do you want to close out the episode with? What do you want our audience to take away from this?
Well, before I close and give you that one, how about I say, if you haven't checked out Master Hopkick, check out Master Hopkick. It's unofficially Whistlekick mascot. It's a story of a young man going through his karate journey, has a adorable rabbit sidekick known as Master Hopkick, but we're not going to get into that. Part of the reason why I'll mention that is because it's great for kids. It's great for martial arts schools. And I may just have happened to have written a teacher's guide that accompanies it that you can purchase as well. If
talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about what that is.
So Master Hopkick, the book itself, is a lot of short chapters written at a roughly like middle grade, late elementary level. And they're the sort of chapters that you could read in 5 minutes. So in a kid's class or even in an adult's class at a martial arts school, you could either assign the chapter or potentially have read the chapter if you have like before time, after time, when the kids are getting ready, or just as a wind down. And so what I did was I took each one of those chapters and came up with discussion questions, reading questions that could be used to dig a little bit deeper. Okay, well, what do you think our main character learned in this chapter? Things didn't go his way. How do you think he's going to deal with it? And helping kids explore those interpersonal relationships and everything like that, looking and saying, how do we overcome a challenge? What do we do when things don't go our way? And it's something that could be used in a traditional classroom as well. It doesn't have to be a dojo. And one of the nice things about it is that the main character spends most of his time in and around Australia. So for those of us in the United States, it gets us to focus on another part of the world a little bit as well. We're going to look at a map and we're going to get a perspective of, okay, well, this person's from here, this person's from here. Where really is that? And it's been a lot of fun. The second official book of Master Hopkick is out. The third book is in process, and I have been reminded that I need to be working on that second teacher guide to go with it. Jenny, who's in charge of book division, has been great. The other Jenny that actually wrote the books, also awesome. But yeah, it's been an interesting opportunity for me. And admittedly, it's kind of fun to see your name up on Amazon.
So, yep, you can indeed purchase those through Amazon. You can also purchase them through whistlekick.com. And you can use the code, again, podcast15, save yourself some money. Instead of going to Amazon, you can get it directly from us. That's great. So how do you want to leave the audience now?
Leaving the audience, let's go with the idea of, if you haven't started training, try. Look around, find a school near you. Look around, find a school near you, and give it a try. If it doesn't feel right, look around, see if there's another school that maybe does. Give it a chance. If you are training, try not to stop. If you find that the style isn't right for you, there's almost assuredly a style out there that would be a good fit for you. You just need to find it. And if you do have to stop because you can't attend whatever school you're going to, don't stop. Like, keep working on your stuff so that you don't lose it, because who knows, maybe you're going back to a same school, or maybe you do find that other next school for you later on, and you'll be happy that you did.